Hi everybody, so today I want to discuss the regime archetype of the Jealous Prefect, as the title says, right? And I'll start by defining what I mean by archetype. Archetype of what, you could ask. What I'm talking about are the people who seem to make it a daily chore of theirs to oppose people like me and maybe people like you. It's obsession level. It is irrational hatred. They call you racist, fascist, sexist, far-right, neo-Nazi, KKK, extremist, or whatever. And that you should have no place in society. You should barely be allowed to use the shops. You should be fired. You should be banned from social media because you're just so extraordinarily evil, right? And we all know that's a form of mental illness in a way, to have that view of someone. But I like to look at these archetypes to, we have a plane overhead, these archetypes to try to understand maybe what motivates them. And with the Jealous Prefect, it's dawned on me that they're not acting on what they claim to at all. I suppose maybe that's obvious, but I'll try to explain what I think they are acting on, which is a deep and visceral class loathing. And by class, I don't strictly mean top hat versus cloth cap. It is a money thing. They usually are rich. They usually dislike you because they can sense you're not rich or part of some kind of legacy elite. It is that, but it's not strictly that. The name kind of gives it away. Jealous Prefect. It's the type of person who, and I'm going to use school a lot as an analogy, because school, although it is a bit remedial and, petty in a way, the broad outlines of school between certain types of people don't just go away when school is over. They continue into adult life, and they kind of somewhat do form society. So I will use school as an example here. Prefect, and it's the type of person who in school probably did have a rich dad, a lawyer or a doctor or a banker or something like that, who would self-elect to always be the class rep or be the prefect or whatever, which is fine. If you're viewing here and you're like, well, I was once prefect or whatever, I'm speaking generally, because you might have done a thing once or twice or whatever. I'm talking about the guy who was always doing that, pushing himself up when nobody else is asking him to, right? It gets elected or made class rep or prefect or whatever. And, people in the class sense it. They know that person is a smarmy little bastard, basically, and doesn't represent them, and they don't like him. But he doesn't care. He's blind to that. He's all kind of groomed himself into this idea that, well, I am the important one. I am the kind of elite within this class. And so it goes. I don't need to belabor it, because I think you straight away will know, everybody will know who I'm talking about. That guy, Another thing they would do, and this is specific to my era of growing up, let's say in secondary school, is they would do these things like where they write a fake EU speech thing and then submit it. And if they win, they go to Brussels and they stand with a Brussels bureaucrat, someone, right? And they it's all very elite, and it's kind of like a little grooming factory. And no one really liked those people. Again, I would see people, not me, because I didn't want to, but you would see people in class who you would go, you know what, I think John should be your class rep. Now, he's not going to put up his hand. Your man will probably put his hand up first and maybe even pull little sneaky moves to undermine others. But I think John is a natural leader. He's responsible, he gets good grades and all that, but at the same time everyone likes him and he likes everybody. I think John is our natural leader in a way. And yet, Dave, or whatever we'll say, the regime, not the regime, but the prefect will always be in that position because he sees himself as part of this elite almost, that through natural right belongs in these positions, even though they absolutely don't. So that's the archetype. And I think the problem they have these days is that they see people on the kind of dissident right, or populists in general. And I'm speaking personally here because of the channel I'm talking on now or whatever. I don't have a massive presence, but a little bit, enough of a presence to notice something, right? And I'm not going on an ego trip here. I'm just using my position as a kind of a way to describe it to you. And because I've done a YouTube channel and I do all this, it's made me notice it far more, because I'm a target of it and I do notice it. It's that when so you could say Gran Torino, Keith Woods, people like that as well, whoever, you know. And again, they're much bigger than me, so I'm not on an ego trip here. But these jealous prefects, they look at people like me or Rowan or Keith or whatever, and just general populists out there, activists, people who write articles or whatever, who have made a little kind of name for themselves and have a kind of a platform and a voice, and they attract. There are people who say, I agree with you, and whatever. They're jealous of that, so jealous, and so hateful about it. That's what motivates their hate. And it is a class thing. Again, I did grow up in a council estate, right? But then, you know, I don't know, the glasses. Maybe I picked up a bit of a Midley accent in college, stuff like that. So it doesn't really matter what class I am or not, strictly speaking, in terms of income or something like that. It's that they're looking at people who in school would kind of back away from having the voice, from being the class rep or whatever. I don't want to do that, you know, which is actually a healthy instinct, I think. They look at people who are traditionally like that, who through a fluke of internet and the way global politics has gone and the culture wars and stuff, kind of through a fluke like that, have found a voice and a place and a certain amount of influence within society. Even if it can be broadly maligned by the regime, they still exist. I still exist. Rowan still exists. Keith, etc. And I think that's where their hatred comes from. It's not about racism, so-called, or it's none of that. It's class loathing. It boils their piss to see people have a voice. And not only that, but let's say to see you have more of a voice than them, and not only without the boost that they would have gotten from the regime, but in spite of it. Having a voice in spite of it, in the face of kind of regime tyranny, the regime trying to hold you back, and yet still plodding forward and making a voice for yourself. It drives them mad. I noticed it. There was this guy, I won't name him. I can't remember his name. I'm not going to lie, but he put up a thread on Twitter or something. This clearly rich kind of posh guy who went to Trinity College. Trinity is like the elite college in Ireland, right? Who's like put up this thread about me saying he now has 8,000 subscribers. This is a disgrace. He shared this on Telegram. He whatever. He's terrible. This like 12-bit long thread on Twitter. I'm going, what motivates you to write this? I don't think you care about my views on immigration. Really, your hatred can't be ascribed to that. That would be irrational. It's a class thing. You don't like the fact that I have a voice and no one cares what you think, even though you say exactly what the regime says. And that bothers you. That bothers you deeply. Another one I saw was the guy recently as the yellow vest and the kind of anti-lockdown protesters who these rich kind of boys, prefects would consider just such rabble, who walked through Dublin in the number of about 3,000 people. This guy obviously got a shock from that. He goes, oh my God, look at these disgusting rabble walking through Dublin. Who do they think they are? If they're not protesting LGBT climate change or something else regime affiliated, which I proudly espouse, then they are disgusting and terrible. And they react with that hatred. So for example, there was this guy, again, I've forgotten his name. He posted a picture of himself outside Trinity, standing across the road from these ordinary, normal, decent sound people with his thumb down like that, like Caesar, I think it was, or whoever. And he put it in black and white and then posted it on Twitter and said, today I stood up to the fascists. Today I stood up to these conspiracy merchant fascist scum or whatever. And very proud of himself. And what he did, he said, today I stood against the fascists outside the college that I studied in and became a doctor of medicine. And I think a lot of people commented on this. It's like, why do you need to say that you did med? You passed med? Like, what's the relevance? That was clearly a status signal to say, I'm a doctor. I went to Trinners for winners. And you people are all just scum. And that's what it is. I don't know if I've kind of given my ramble kind of justice there, but you have to recognize this, because with this dissident right populist thing versus the kind of regime people, you have to recognize this for what it is. It's important for your own state of mind in a sort of way, but also in terms of strategy and how you position your own rhetoric and your worldview. It's important to recognize this. When they call you in some cases, a conspiracy theorist, and sometimes that's kind of justified, there's the wackier element, but either way, sometimes it's not, and it doesn't really matter. When they call people these catch-all terms, or racist or sexist or whatever it happens to be, you have to recognize and understand that with a lot of these people, they're not talking about that at all. That's the word that comes out, but it's not what they're saying. What they're saying is, I hate you because I am the one who is meant to be a political actor. I am the one who is meant to give speeches and do protests and have an activist organization and all this. Not you. You do not get to do that. I do that, right? And that's where they're coming from. That's the feeling that they have. And like I say, it's class-based. It's not strictly related to money, but it also kind of is. And that's who they are. And I love it. I love that. I've started to see it for what it is. When you get that from a lot of these people, it is a mix of jealousy, the jealous prefect. It is a kind of adoration in a certain type of way, because they wish in a way that they could do what you do. And I think they're self-conscious of it. They're self-conscious and self-aware of how much of a regime shill they are, and how there is a broader movement rising up against them, ultimately, because that's what this populist uprising is across the West at the moment. And they're aware of that, and they see that changing, and that turn, and that rising up of the people, and they see you as an avatar of it, and they absolutely despise you for it. And it's glorious. So, I don't know. Give me an old subscribe if you haven't already, and enjoy your evening. Thanks for watching. See you, lads.